So when we are mounting our thermostat to the wall, it's important first to know what kind of material we are mounting to so we can have the right mounting equipment. But in this case, we're just using a piece of sheetrock that we have mounted here for a test board, and that's going to be the most common. But first of all, we want to make sure that the thermostat is level. That's not for functionality. It'll function in any location or orientation, but it's important for aesthetics. And so I actually have 2 holes pre-drilled there. But, let's just look and see how that's going to work. So we want to get it roughly level. And then we want to mark those holes. So in this case, we are already marked, but I'm going to take this punch and go ahead and mark out those holes. And these holes are already here, but I like to take a hole punch and punch that hole in and then round it out a little bit. Same here on the other side, round that out, that's 2, except that wall anchor, so it'll go in a little bit easier. If we go too big, that wall anchor is not going to fit well, so you want to start off a little smaller than what you think you might need. We can always enlarge it if we need to. Then we want to insert our wall anchors. They should be a little tough to go in. If they just slide right in, then your hole's too big. But they should just barely start to where you have to drive those the rest of the way. And I'm actually going to take my handy dandy channel lock hammer. I'm going to just tap those in flush. Same thing with the other one. Try to hammer left-handed. No, I'm not. So we want to get those both flush. Then we'll take our mounting sub-base and get a couple of screws just started there to hold it in place for us. You can usually start those by hand. Then we'll take our screwdriver, finish those off. I'm not going to take that all the way tight yet because I want to recheck my level once we get this one almost all the way in. So we'll take it. And we're going to check our level one more time. Looks great. So now we'll finish tightening, holding it in place so it doesn't move. We want those snug. We don't want the customer, as they make adjustments or as they're pulling the thermostat off to change batteries, we don't want it to get out of level. So we want these to be good and tight. Now the wiring sub-base is ready to mount on here. It just has a top clip and then these 2 bottom just push in, but we're not going to do that yet because I like to wire the wiring base before mounting it up just so I have more freedom to turn and get my wires in. That's just a whole lot easier than trying to do it once it's mounted up here to the wall plate. So now we have the thermostat coming through the wall, and I have a little bit of play there where I can pull that out a little further if necessary. But we need to strip that back about 2 inches, 1.5 to 2 inches. So that's going to give us enough room inside the wiring base to get our wires to where they need to be. And so again, we want to be careful. We need to get this brown plastic outer jacket off without damaging the wires inside. And so the way I like to do that is to take my cutters without even pinching. I'll just go around until I have a good scar on this outer jacket. So we get that white line there, so we should be able to just kind of bend and that'll break and slide right off without ever touching the wire inside. So we have the pull rope inside, pull string, so that's if we did want to strip the wire back further, we could just grab this and pull and it would rip up through here and rip that plastic jacket off. We're not going to use that. We're just going to cut it off. Now we need to strip our wires. I'm going to use all of these wires in this application. So I'm going to go ahead and get those separated out, and we'll start. And for these thermostats, we're not going to go very far back in these holes. No more than a ½ inch do we want to strip back. Probably only about 1/4 of an inch that we need, so that we can get that wire back in here and make contact. So let's get those stripped back. So I'm going to use the top notch here on these strippers. That didn't cut very good. Let's try that again. So sometimes if the thermostat wire is a little too small of a gauge, one thing you can watch that I'm doing is once I squeeze down, I kind of go back and forth. That's just helping to cut into that jacket. And instead of ripping it off, that cuts through the jacket to where we can just slide it off. So now we want to connect the wires to our wiring base. So I'm going to pre-feed everything through this hole in the center. And I like to start at the top and work my way down and around. That seems to be the best way to avoid crossing wires up. And I don't like for wires to go up and over or under. So I try to start, so my top one is Y, so I try to get my Y up here on top. And we'll fold it over. And with these, it should just be able to push in. And we want to pull it, make sure it made good contact. Next is G. So I'm going to get it out here and get G kind of separated from everything else. So ideally, you just barely see any copper coming out. That's much less chance of having something that shorts, where an electrical wire hits something that it's not supposed to. And then our next one is common. I'm going to use blue for common in this application. And then on the other side, we have white and red. Then once we get everything in, we want to pull it back in snug where all of our wires are going to fit neatly inside here, so it should close neatly without having pressure pushing back out on that. If you do, that means you have some wires that are sticking out. So we want those wires all to be snug back in this compartment so that when we clip that on, it's good and flush. And then to mount the wiring base onto the wall plate, we start with the top clip. So we just pull that down tight on there, and then we can just push the bottom two till they clip in, and now everything is secured. Now, any of the T-series thermostats will mount on this sub base. So I'm going to have a T6 in this application, but very simple to mount. So it's going to cover up and hide all these screw hole openings, and that's true of all of the T6, or I'm sorry, the T-series thermostats. And once we plug that in, that thermostat is ready for action.